Hello and welcome to SW6 Essential. Wow, Fulham have beaten Leicester by 2-1. I'm joined, of course, by Joe Sansom. How are you?
I'm really good. Yeah, I don't think we were expecting this podcast video, to be super positive, but it's going to be.
I think we're in disbelief. We're over the moon. But of course, before we get into that, the sad news came out on Sunday that Papa Bouba Diop passed away, aged 42, from a long illness, which was extremely sad. And I think the club did a remarkable and fantastic job of commemorating him and the celebration with Lookman's goal. Joe, we'll be the first to admit that we were maybe too young to appreciate Papa Bouba Diop as a player. As I said on Full Time Live, I think I saw one of his last games, and actually I remember this morning that I think the 07-08 season he moved to Portsmouth, and then when we played Portsmouth, I think he played for Portsmouth at Craven Cottage when they beat us 2-0. I don't have many memories of him, but you can see from the fans and the reaction that he meant so much to the club, and he will be a huge loss for us.
Yeah, it was really sad to see the news, and I'm similar age to you, obviously, and I've only seen a couple of Fulham games in which he's played. He played in my first ever Fulham match that I went to see, which was a 3-2 loss to Birmingham in around, I think it was like about around 2006. So he was at the heart of our midfield then. It's a shame I didn't get to see him play more. He seemed like an incredible player. And since then, obviously, even though I maybe didn't see him much in the flesh, watching some of his goals, that goal against Manchester United, the goal he scored for Senegal in the World Cup, he seemed like a great player and a really amazing person, judging from all the stories from the club. So I'm really glad that we got the result for both footballing reasons, but also it seemed like they put in a performance for him as well, which was great to see.
It was remarkable. Monday night, 5:30 kickoff. Went into it. The lineup came out at 4:30, and we were like, "Oh, well, that's interesting. No Kaney, no Mitrovic." And as you could tell by the title, are Fulham better suited without Mitrovic? We're going to get into that discussion. And Joe, we normally talk about a subject away from the game, but I feel as though this week we have to talk about it. We have to. We can't just ignore the fact that we've just beaten a top six side away from home, a team that, if they'd have beaten us 6-0, they would have gone top of the Premier League. A team that has been top of the Premier League this season. A team that's gone to Manchester City and scored 5 goals. Say what you will about Europa League on Thursday, and they rested and they had a few injuries. This is the best Fulham result for Fulham in a top Premier League season since surely 2013 when we beat Spurs away 1-0.
Yeah, 100%. I just couldn't really believe what I was seeing. We were just, from minute one, I thought we looked competent. It didn't seem like we were being outclassed. It looked like we were going toe-to-toe with every player. We were talking about the Budweiser man of the match, Jamie Vardy, who seemed to have limited chances up front. I think that's the fantasy football curse a lot of people have been saying, but I think far more likely is that we defended really well. And it's great to see, because recently we've had some of these really good defensive performances, but they've come against teams where a few people were sort of putting a slight dampener on it by saying it was only West Brom, it was only West Ham, who are 5th, by the way. So I think that's a bit harsh. But now we've done it against a top side, a side that, as you say, has gone to Man City and won convincingly, has gone to the Emirates and won this season, has looked really good going forward. I mean, one thing that was talked about slightly before the game was that they don't create as many chances as you'd think for a team that scores so many goals. But normally they're so clinical when they do. And the fact that we reduce them to basically scraps. I mean, Jamie Vardy's one of the best strikers in the league. He was working on absolute scraps. It was brilliant. I haven't seen Fulham defend like that against a good team for so many years, probably since something like that Spurs game you were talking about when Berbatov scored the winner. And I'm sure you're the same. I found it so satisfying to watch, even if in the second half I was counting it down going 44 minutes left, okay, 43, 42, just waiting for that final whistle.
It was incredible. I was almost celebrating every time we won a goal kick or a throw in or got the ball away. It was quite remarkable because even at 2-0, 2-0 was a very risky lead to have, especially away from home. And I thought at 2-0 at half time, we're not. This is not a done deal, definitely. And we'll come on to what happened in the second half. But Joe, this performance definitely reminded me of the playoff final. The way we played at an opposition who has so many threats going forward, and we nullified it to perfection. I mean, apart from they hit the post with a really like a weird situation. It was the second phase from a free kick. The ball was scuffed. It wasn't hit cleanly. It hit the post, and then Fofana hit the bar. It was quite remarkable how that didn't go in. And as soon as that happened, I thought this could be our day. Something could go our way. And I've been speaking for weeks and weeks about how little VAR decisions need to go our way this season. And finally, it happened with that penalty. But of course, the first goal of Anguissa running through the midfield, bypassing a challenge, playing it to Lookman, who finished it beautifully. And then the penalties, the 2 goals in about 5 to 8 minutes, basically changed this whole game around, Joe. And I didn't celebrate either of the goals as hard as you probably should do, because I knew of how long there was to go in the game, and it was just remarkable to see us go into that 2-0 lead.
Yeah, I celebrated the second goal, the penalty. I think I celebrated it harder than I've celebrated a penalty for ages, purely because we've scored one rather than going 2-0 up. That was sort of like the secondary thing, because I couldn't believe it when I saw Cavaleiro step up. We were talking last week and we were saying, oh, whoever, like Mitrovic should take our penalties. He's the penalty taker. Obviously not on the pitch, and we're going to talk about that in this video. I sort of think fair play. We stuck with the taker. He slipped last week. He didn't do the wide-angled run-up this time. He just very simply stepped up and lashed it into the top corner. And first thing that I did after that was look at the clock, as I'm sure you did, and think, oh, have we scored too early, if that's a thing?
Yeah.
But no, it was a brilliant performance, and I'm just relieved that they didn't score early in the second half, because I'm sure we'd have got a bit nervy. I'm not saying we'd have imploded or anything like that, because we still defended well after they scored for the 10 minutes that remained. But I think we did so well to sort of, we talked about this on our SW6 Essential videos before, where we sort of said, make the game a bit boring, and make it a bit dull, take your time. Like, it's not cheating, it's just seeing the game out. Everyone does it, and better Premier League teams do it than us. And I think that it was important, and we know how good we are when we go ahead under Parker. Such a good record, never lost a game when we've gone 1-0 up. And yeah, just I'm so relieved that we've seemed to got a few things off our back in one. The penalty, not saying it's a done deal, we might miss the next one, but at least we've sort of stopped the rot. Lookman and Cavaleiro redeeming themselves. This first half against Everton, forgotten, such a good defensive performance again, and just ticking all the right boxes.
It's incredible, and you know, it's always quite scary when you go to and up at places like this, because it doesn't happen often, obviously. But you know that the threat that Leicester have, they made 2 changes at half time. I was thinking they are going to throw this kitchen sink at us. But even then, we caught them on the break and we looked more dangerous going forward. And we're going to get into why this is, because Joe, an hour before the kickoff, no Mitrovic, no Kearney. And the group chat we're in sort of was like, what is going on here? This is not going to go well. But after I thought about it for a long time, I was like, well, hold on. I kind of get why he's starting all these players, because we need to basically play on the break. We're not going to have the lion's share possession. We're going to have to take our chances if and when they fall to us, of which we did. And this whole thing now, we're going to go into this thing where out possession, we played this 5 at the back system, or 3 with wing backs, and Bobby D. Cordova-Reid at right wing back. It's extraordinary, but it worked to a T, Joe. And I'm so gassed for the whole like club, because Parker must have thought about that in the week. We saw the interview with Bobby Reid on the day after yesterday, saying that he worked in it all week, and it just worked to a T. They didn't really, apart from hitting the post in the bar, we completely caught them out, and then sprung a counterattacks. It was brilliant.
Yeah, Parker's used a few of those position changes on Bobby Reed this season, and I think keep him at right wing back when we're defending, because he was brilliant. Nothing got past him, and he's probably one of the last players I'd have thought would play right wing back for us, just because he's normally so attack minded. It just worked so well. He fitted in perfectly, and I've got to say, there's some, obviously when we're on our game and we've got 70% of the ball and we're creating chances for fun. Hasn't happened much this season, but maybe last year in the Championship and stuff like that. The Millwall game, we won 4-0, for example. It's brilliant, but there's something great about a defensive performance where we only had about 30% of the ball and we created so many chances with that, and we looked like scoring every time we went forward. And yeah, our group chat, including me, we were all a bit slightly confused when we saw the lineup, but looking at it with hindsight, it's a counter-attacking team. Mitrovic wouldn't have worked in that system. He's too slow. Him and Kearney would have offered us something different. Kearney plays a bit slower than Loftus-Cheek, I'd say, a little bit more simple passes, whereas Loftus-Cheek, who hasn't offered us too much yet, he's played well at times, a little bit more, I think, a dynamic player. And it just seemed to work, and the system was perfect, and it was almost like we didn't want any of the players to get subbed off when we were trying to hold on to the game. And I guess this brings us on to the topic of the video. It's going to be tough for Mitrovic to get back in the team.
Well, this is it now, isn't it? I feel like there's two different sides to this. There's Fulham playing at home and Fulham playing away from home. And obviously we've got Manchester City at the weekend. And what pleases me most is we came into this for Everton, we lost, yeah. But then we had Leicester, Liverpool, Man City, and we were fearing the absolute worst. So the best thing you can do right now is pick up 3 points, get yourself outside the relegation zone. That's what pleases me so much about this result. But anyway, Fulham away from home, surely Man City would just go exactly the same. I think that we have to do exactly the same. Man City are better on the ball than Leicester. They'll probably create more chances. We have to be so much more switched on at the back, and again potent in attack. But maybe when it comes to the Liverpool game, are we going to switch it up again? Are we going to go without Mitrovic? I don't know. You guess right now, our next two games, we're going to have to surely play the exact same way we played against Leicester, and play on the counter-attack. And even if you don't want to start Bobby Reed or Cav, you've got Abu Kamara, who of course is blessed with blistering pace. So Joe, what would you do for these next two games? Would Mitrovic even get a look in off the bench?
I think possibly off the bench, but I wouldn't start him purely because I think we need to play in both these games the exact same way we've approached the Leicester game. I think when you play these sides that are so good going forward, it's very naive to sort of go from the off and go at them and play the way we would in a must-win home game, for example, like the West Brom game. And even then we had less of the ball. So both times we won, we've had less of the ball this season. And I think it's a more pragmatic approach, and I think that it's something that works. So I play the exact same team in the Man City game, and then barring no injuries, I play the same in the Liverpool game. And hopefully in both of those, we can put in some good shifts. I think that's all we can ask. We're playing probably the two of the best teams in the country, possibly two of the best teams in the world. And I think if we're solid and we're compact, we've got a chance. It's going to be so tough. And I don't think any Fulham fans are naive enough to think, oh, well, we've beaten Leicester, let's go and beat Man City. But why not do exactly what we just did to Leicester and see how far it takes us? Because we look very good going forward. We can cause these teams problems. Man City and Liverpool are not as good as they have been. They're playing very well, but they've both dropped a lot of points this season so far for their standards. And I think that Mitrovic needs to start on the bench. And the only one I'm slightly torn on is Kearney, because whilst I think that Loftus-Cheek had a good game against Leicester, I think he was probably our quietest player. I think that's maybe because a lot of the stuff he did went a little bit under the radar. He took a lot of their midfielders out of position, slightly sort of drifted towards the right wing. But I think that if one of them is going to get back in this team, it's going to be Kearney rather than Mitrovic. can I see either of them getting back in the team to start these games? I don't know.
There's also the point that Leicester played a three at the back system, and I think Manchester City. Oh, sorry, they played a three with wing backs, and I don't think Man City will play a back four. But I don't think that doesn't make too much of a difference. I think if you sit behind the ball and break, you're always going to get opportunities going forward if you get the ball in the right areas. But what I will say is that the reason why we maybe got this win and maybe we were doing 2 points better off than we were last time in the Premier League is because Slav probably wouldn't do this. He would stick to his principles and go, "Oh no, we must play out from the back. We must play this football." But whereas Scott is adapting his tactics according to the opposition, which is basically what you should do as a manager, especially in this division. I think you can get away with it in the Championship. I think if you're playing, if you go away to who was a tough opposition last season, Leeds. Okay, we lost, but even at home, we stuck to our system and we played well and we won the game. But I think that when you're in the Premier League, you have to adapt, and so it's good that we've got this solid back five now. We've got Areola, we've got Aina, Adebayo, Anderson, and Robinson, who, by the way, were all fantastic on Monday night.
Yeah.
But it's good that we're now adapting systems and according to our position, which is what you should do. So now it's a question of how will we fare against Man City? How will we use Mitrovic if he comes on off the bench? Will Abu Kamara play? And how, because Man City played last night, they drew 0-0. They arguably definitely should have won. I watched the highlights and they probably should have scored about 4 or 5 goals. And Man City are mid-table. I mean, they're not flying high in the Premier League like they were this time last season or 2 seasons ago. Joe, do we have any chance? Like any chance at all?
Yeah, we've got a chance to pick up something, but it's a slim chance purely because of the quality of the opposition. I mean, I think the worry is an early goal for them, and the game's so difficult. You saw what happened to Burnley last week. Burnley had a couple of injuries, but they've just come off a great defensive performance against Palace, conceded early, and then they've got to attack City, and the floodgates just opened. You feel as if a team like Burnley can sort of defend deep and keep them out for a while. The game gets very tough, but as soon as you see the early goal, the game plan goes out the window, and you sort of feel that's what would have happened to us if that Fofana shot had gone in. But it didn't. But it didn't go in. It was a bad miss, and I don't think that's luck. I think that's a bad miss. And yeah, so we have to keep it really compact early. Do not concede an early goal. I don't want to see BT Sport putting up that graphic that I hate, where it's like, oh, Fulham conceding in the first 10 minutes, bingo, or whatever it is. Like, ha, 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 let's all laugh at Fulham, even though Liverpool have conceded 1 less goal. It still annoys me, as you can see.
You're still living rent-free.
There's a lot of people living rent-free in here. And most of them are pundits. But yeah, I mean, if we keep it tight early, we've got a chance. It's such a hard game. Probably the second hardest game, you'd say, maybe after Liverpool away this season. That's up for debate, but anything picked up in this game is a positive. But one thing's for sure, if we do lose this, it's very much a priority to not lose it heavily, because our goal difference at the moment is better than the teams below us, which means they've got to completely overtake us to get out of the relegation zone or have a huge swing of up to like 4 or 5 goals, I think it is. I'm very interested to see after these 2 games, when we come to, on paper, the more winnable games against Brighton and Newcastle, whether Mitrovic will come back in or whether we'll keep this sort of counter-attacking system.
Yeah, it will be really interesting to see, because, I would say they're inferior opposition, and I think that Mitrovic, can be a threat if you put balls into the box. But for now, when you just want to hit teams on the counter, you want pure pace and power in your midfield and in the forward front three. Joe, let me ask you a question. If you're a Sheffield United fan and you're a West Brom fan and you're a Burnley fan, and you sit down on your Monday night and you think, oh, if Leicester could just do a job and win the game, happy days. And then you see what happened on Monday night. And it's not like we got lucky. It's not like we won being second best. I feel as though we won because we out-tacticked. Is that even a word? Out-tacticked Leicester City. I really enjoyed the analysis from Jamie and Gary Neville. We're having Jamie Carragher and Gary Neville on Monday Night Football wax lyrical about Fulham for like 5 or 7 minutes at half time. So how would you feel as a Sheffield United fan being on 1 point and West Brom? You'd think, oh my gosh, that's a bit of a problem.
I would be fuming. I would be fuming. And I don't know if anyone else watching this knows me well, but I'm very much into looking at other teams' results and celebrating if a result goes our way.
Yeah.
I was watching the West Brom Sheffield United game the night before, and when Sheffield United were missing those chances, I had my head in my hands like I was a Sheffield United fan hoping for a draw because I thought that suited us best. So if I was a Sheffield United or West Brom or Burnley fan watching that, a game that you completely think that Leicester will win, I'd be furious because West Brom got quite lucky on the weekend. Sheffield United had very good chances in that game. Should have at least drawn, probably should have won it, I think. And it's a game we weren't expected to win, and now we've pulled away. We were talking a couple of weeks ago about it's not just about winning the mini league; it's about who can come out at the top of that mini league, winning the most games against the sides around you, but can also pull apart these shock results from elsewhere. And so far, we're the one that's done that. Everyone else has sort of won the games you'd expect them to, or not won any games at all.
Well, West Brom drew with Chelsea, and they were 3-0 up.
That is true. That is true. But they didn't win it, and I guess you could say until then they had the advantage. But now we've actually won one of those shock games rather than drawn it. So it's a small advantage at this stage. We're only 1 point ahead of them, but we have to remember that it's a psychological advantage. We're outside the relegation zone, and all these teams have been looking at our fixtures going, they'll lose the next 3. This is our chance to get ahead of them. And now they're going, wait a second, are Fulham slightly better than we thought they were?
Yeah.
And hopefully the answer is yes.
Well, when Jamie Carragher said that thing that I'm more certain that Fulham will go, it's because we were in an absolute state. We didn't have a settled back four. We were still playing the likes of Adoy, Ream, Hector, just players who we know that we needed to replace. And now we're playing this settled back four. And suddenly, I said it the other night after the game, we were unlucky against West Ham. I think we should have got a point. We were good against Sheffield United. We were solid and probably should have won the game. We're now seeing the reaps of that defensive solidness and the continuity at the back. I know I'm not going to say, because of that, we should go on and get points against Liverpool and Man City. I know the challenge ahead, but it at least gives me some courage thinking, well, we're going to go away to Newcastle, who are extremely inconsistent. We're going to go to Southampton team, who are very impressive, but let a lead slip at the weekend against Manchester United. I have now, we talked about it after, which game was it? I can't remember, but we were really confident that Fulham had enough to stay up. Then we lost and played quite poorly against Everton. But now I'm like, well, if we can continue like that and adapt our game and adapt our tactics to each opposition, I feel like we could not even finish 17th, but maybe 16th or 15th. That's not me getting ahead of myself. That's me thinking if we can just pull away from the bottom 3, and if Sheffield United, who've got Leicester at the weekend, and Leicester want to bounce back, can they keep on 1 point? Maybe I'm just getting too ahead of myself, but I'm certainly enjoying this Premier League ride a lot more than I was 2 years ago.
Yeah, and I think the thing with the Jamie Carragher quote is we're all sort of slating him now, including me. But at the time, if we'd played that same team that we were starting those games with for the whole season, we would have gone down. And we still might go down, but I'm certainly a lot more confident, like you are now, that we can sort of solidify ourselves. I feel like this team looks like a Premier League side. I don't think we look out of place like we did last time we were up, or even the first few games of the season. I think that if we'd started, let's say the season started in the Sheffield United game, I think right now we wouldn't be too concerned about going down. It's just a shame that we had those first 3 or 4 games where we were so poor. It also looks like we can now score goals. At the start of the season, we were worried about the defence, and going forward, we thought, do we have enough? We still might not have enough going forward, but if we were to bring someone in January, possibly, do we even know which position we need now? Do we need another striker? Do we need a wing? I'm not sure. I don't have a clue. But are we better suited without Mitrovic? I think the system that we played against Leicester and the system to go forward in these next 2 games, 100% yes. In terms of the whole season, I'm not so sure, because I feel like maybe he's just not fit at the moment. I know he had a lot of games, international duty, etc. I feel like he is still our best striker. Obviously, he is our number 9. He's our talisman, and he's still probably the player that I'm most confident of when they get a chance. I know he's missed a few recently, but I think some of the games, like the Newcastle game, the Brighton game, they're probably games where we've got to attack them slightly more, and we need someone there that's going to be in the box, ready to pounce on these chances. But until then, so happy to continue with the system, and fingers crossed we can reap the rewards again.
Yeah, absolutely. We have to talk about Tosin Adarabioyo. I mean, there's a compilation, if you've seen 2 minutes 15 minutes of 2 minutes 15 seconds of him just and his work against Leicester. I mean, what I will say is that sometimes his clearances seemed rushed, but I feel like sometimes he had to just clear that ball just to get it away. But I felt on the day, Adarabioyo, I know Bobby Reed got man of the match, but we have to talk about how solid he was. And Anderson got into Shearer's team of the week.
Yeah, I mean, they look like a great partnership so far. They had a bit of a ropey half against Everton, and that's the only half where they've maybe not been solid. Whether the goals were their fault in that match is even up for debate. But I think for the first time in a long time, it looks like we've got a Premier League quality back line. It doesn't seem like we're sort of having to rely on Championship quality players to try and keep goals out against these quality forwards. Robinson's been a revelation at left back. I think he has taken to the Premier League like a duck to water, considering he was at Wigan last season. Had a good season there, obviously. But yeah, it's just so nice to see that now, even compared to the start of the season, when the other team attacks, obviously you're always going to be a little bit nervous, but it's not that fear of like dread, like we are going to concede, if you know what I mean. And the fact that Tosin cost about 2 million is just unbelievable. I mean, whatever happens this season, I think we've got a centre back that is going to be in our back line for a long time. And how nice is it that I know I watched that compilation. I think it's a great compilation. A few of the comments from other teams were like, oh, he's just clearing it every time. It's like, well, I would rather that than what we've seen over the past few years when
he's reading the play.
Pass it. Yeah, exactly. And I would rather a defender kick it out and give it back to the other team in midfield than not clear it or give away a throw in a dangerous area or anything like that. I think it's good defending.
To finish off, what we'll talk about is quite a bizarre situation where I don't think I've ever seen this happen before, where Fulham are playing during what is quite exciting, not really this season, the FA Cup third round draw. Now I was in two minds. I was thinking, if we're 3-0 down and the game's over, I'll whack it on. But we're in a situation where we're 2-0 up. And I thought, I think we might see this out. I'll whack it on. And I was just kept my eye on everything going on. And suddenly, I think it might have been just a minute after we were drawn against QPR, which, by the way, is a fantastic tie to get, just to show we probably can't go as away fans. Harvey Barnes then sticks it in for 2-1. And it's almost the worst ever time to concede, because not only is there 5 minutes to go, there's going to be about 5 added minutes of stoppage time. And so then the onslaught starts, and I genuinely couldn't watch. I was pacing up and down the lounge. I literally just couldn't keep my eye on the game because it was just so quite scary of what could happen. And Joe, how did you feel in those final minutes? Because I knew if we'd bottled 2 points here, this would be worse than Brighton away. This would be worse than Sheffield United away. It'd be the most heartbreaking thing to happen since Forlan.
Yeah, my life sort of flashed before my eyes when Harvey Barnes stuck it in. I was like, this is going to be the worst 10 minutes for a long time. It was. I haven't felt like that since the when we went 1-0 up in the playoff final. It's that sort of dread that if we just don't concede, we've done this. We pulled off an incredible result, and I'm a bit of a pessimist. So in the second half, I was always at the back of my mind. I was like, if they score now, they've got half an hour to equalise, then they can win it. They've got 20 minutes to equalise. And I always think if you're 2 goals up, if you get to 90 minutes, two goals up, I start to get a little bit less nervous. I'm like, well, scoring 2 in added time is so rare. And I was like, 5 minutes to go, 5 minutes to go, Harvey Barnes scores. And I was like, that is a nightmare for my heart rate. And we saw it out reasonably well. Got to say, I had a terrible feeling of that last corner. And then the fact it didn't beat the first man, I thought was abysmal from Leicester's point of view.
Leicester,
I mean, that is abysmal. Like the goalie was in the box.
I know.
Yes, we got over the line.
It kind of summed up then. I just don't think it was Leicester's night. The fact that Vardy just didn't get anything going for him. He ran the ball out of play in the second half. Anderson did really well. Joe, my final point before we move on is, before you finish, is the fact that I have been, and I'm sure you know, I've been Ivan Cavaleiro's biggest critic this season. But I have to say, yes, he does all these tricks, but actually it works when you're slowing the game down and playing on the counter-attack, because the skill, moves a defender one way and then the other, you can easily beat them. It's the unnecessary ones that really trigger me. But this one was fine, and it works out well. And I think Cavaleiro scoring the penalty when we've had all these penalty problems, I have to give him tremendous credit. And I'm really, really pleased for him. And his interview after the game, I thought, actually, he is our player. I don't know why I batter him so much sometimes. I do like him. So, yeah, that's my final point on Ivan Footchamps Cavaleiro. Living up to his name, but in a good way this weekend. Oh, this Monday night.
Yeah, I don't think we can look past the fact that until now, he's not really offered anything this season. He's been on the pitch, but maybe at times been a little bit unlucky. I didn't think he was too bad against Everton. It was one of his better performances, penalty aside. But he just seemed to be a different player against Leicester. He was so determined. He was so dangerous. He wasn't just dribbling with no end product. And I know that people will say, oh, he just scored a penalty, but there was so much pressure actually on that penalty. I know he said he didn't feel the pressure, but there was. I mean, imagine if he'd missed again and we'd missed again, and that would have been 1-0. Would Leicester have scored a goal? Most likely, as they already did when we was 2-0. And that could have been a huge turning point in our season. So huge credit, and I think he'll start again against Man City, and deservedly so. Yeah,
you have to give it to him. And maybe he's one of those players who, again, just suits the counter-attack. Because when he gets the ball in a free flow, when the game's kind of even and you're not playing on the counter-attack, he does silly things and gives the ball away in silly areas. Whereas if he could just run and just try and make space and try and make things happen on the counter, then I think it suits him better. So we'll probably leave it there. I thought we'd go on for a bit longer today just because we did win the game. And well, it's been a pleasure. I still can't quite believe it. I feel like, when you have such a high the next day, and the next day you're like, oh, I kind of missed that high. I want to play again. But knowing that we've got Man City and Liverpool coming up, the chances of winning those games are slim, but there is a chance. Joe, fans are allowed in the game against Liverpool. So are you going to put your hat in the ring for a ticket in the Goblet of Fire?
I think I'm going to have to wait and see about prices, because it could be, we haven't really got any details yet, it could be quite extortionate, but hopefully with the news of the vaccine, we'll all be able to go soon enough together, because personally, I want to go and see the games. I don't want to go as much as normal, purely because of how the experience will be, and I might leave it a while, but it's going to be great that we're going to have fans there for the Liverpool game. Hopefully give us a bit of a boost. One of those things where it's a few managers that are saying it's a bit of a disadvantage to certain teams. I can understand that, but it's great that we're getting to a position where fans can start to go back to games safely. And hopefully with this vaccine news, we can start to get back to going to games in a fully safe environment soon.
The vaccine Le Marchand, as I tweeted it last week. We'll talk Liverpool next week, because obviously Man City's the next game. Joe, finally, I will push you for a score prediction against Manchester City.
We're going to do it again, 2-1 Fulham.
Wow. Okay, I'm gonna go 0-0 again. Just hold on and just frustrate the life out of Manchester City. That'll be it for today. I've really enjoyed it because we've won a game, and it's great to be positive and talk about nice things like not being in the relegation zone and Guisa running the midfield for Fulham. Actually, my final point is, we bought Anguissa for 30 million, and everyone was like, too much money. He's worth 30 million. Like, it was so worth the price. I think in hindsight, it just took like a year and a half to actually realise that.
Yeah, 100%. And we need to remember that when we bought him, he was actually quite young. Probably still coming towards his prime. And I know a lot of the Marseille fans were laughing. I think they take him back now.
Yes, they definitely would. I think they're out of the Champions League on 0 points. Or did they win last night? I think they won actually last night.
I've got to say, I don't know.
It's
all about the Championship, not the Champions League.
Yeah, exactly. Talking of the Championship, some stuff's on tonight, so that'll be very nice to watch. Joe, it's been a pleasure. Fulham have won by 2-1 against Leicester City. How about that?
Yeah, amazing. Even in our most confident predictions, we didn't predict it.
No. Well, I just didn't see it coming, and I've got to give Parker more credit for the way he actually sets up. I mean, you said it before. When we've taken the lead, we haven't gone on to lose a game, and that is statements that will precede unfortunate events. I'm sure on Saturday. But Joe, we'll leave it there. Thanks so much for coming and chatting Fulham.
No worries. Thanks for having me on.
We have been SW6 Essential. On Saturday, there'll be a full-time live. The podcast is already out. There'll be a podcast on Thursday as well, previewing Manchester City, and of course Dom's preview, which will be out tomorrow on the YouTube channel. I've been Jack Kelly, and thanks very much for watching. Come on, Fulham. Let's go to Man City and see what can happen. Come on, Fulham.